evening, everyone. Welcome to the February 6th meeting of the Finance and Facilities Committee of the School District of Waukesha. On our agenda, the first item of business is the verification that the meeting was properly posted. Was the meeting properly posted, Mr. Clark?
Yes, it was.
Okay, glad to know that. And now we have an opportunity for citizens to speak or correspondence. Do we have any correspondence, Mr. Clark?
No.
I don't see any brave citizens here today, so we're going to move right on to our committee issues. But first do we have a need right away to adjourn to executive session?
No, it was just, it's tied to the bus contract, which is under action, but if we could move the prescription benefit management up ahead of that, these two fine people could go home early and.
Okay, well, let's, if I have no objections, with unanimous consent, we'll move the information item, prescription benefit and management service, up to the top of our discussion agenda. So step right up.
Yeah, Jeff Schultz from Benico, who's our consultant when it comes to health insurance and other employee benefits, and Melissa Beck from my office, who's our benefits coordinator, are here to help me lay out a area of our insurance coverage that we've been looking into, the prescription benefit management. Right now, we're tied to Optum, thank you, which is part of UHC's, one of their side companies, I guess, and a bid and proposal that Benico's been working with us on to lower our prescription drug costs, not only for the district, but also for our employees. So I asked Jeff to come tonight to kind of walk you through. So there's a PowerPoint which is attached to your executive summary. We're not looking for action tonight, just kind of informing you of the topic. These conversations more than likely will go on for a few more weeks, but should line up for some sort of action if we decide to choose to go a different route in March. So Jeff, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for your time and attention to this matter. I'm going to just walk through this PowerPoint. It's pretty straightforward. It's fairly high level, and certainly be happy to entertain questions as we go along. So first of all, Darren used a fancy term, a PBM. So let's first of all define what a PBM is in the world of self-insurance. It's a pharmacy benefit manager, and the pharmacy benefit manager actually acts as the middleman or the organization between the drug manufacturers and then usually the third-party administrators who are administering your health plan. They set up all the preferred drug lists. They negotiate the contracts with the drug manufacturers, the rebates, the costs. They put together a network of pharmacies. They do all that work, then bring it together, and then contract with the likes of United Healthcare or Anthem or Humana or whomever. They are also the ones that put clinical protocol in place for new drugs that are coming through the pipeline, which have the most efficacy, which maybe not be proven, so they wouldn't add them to the list. So they're really the ones that create the infrastructure that all of our employees then walk through as they consume health care. And they're the ones that actually develop the preferred lists that we all have as participants under health plans relative to what's a preferred drug, what's a not preferred drug, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so that's just sort of what a PBM is. The other thing that we just wanted to bring out, this is just another step in our ongoing strategy to add value to the district and the employees. So you, a while back, approved the initiation and implementation of a high deductible health plan, and then back in September, we moved all employees to a high deductible health plan. We are continuing to just examine where we might wring out some of the fat in our healthcare delivery system. And this is another step in that process. So this is just an ongoing part of our strategy, in the medical and RX plan. So let me just speak to some differences in the models of the way these PBMs operate. Historically, the pharmacy benefit manager world has been a shell game. What I mean by that, it's been highly profitable, and when you are a customer of a PBM, and you were to say, give me an idea of what cost plus looks like. I know you have to make a profit, but how much are you making? Where are you making and everything? That's where their faces go red generally, because they have all sorts of different revenue streams. In many cases, as we've identified here, most of the big guys now are publicly companies, trying to meet public earnings forecasts. They're chasing rebates. So drug manufacturers will put out a drug for $500, but they might give a 20% rebate. Well, they're really boastful about their rebates, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. That's sort of like when you go to Kohl's and they say, congratulations, you saved $248 today. You spent $650, and never mind the $248, if you've gone down the street, would have cost you $150. You save that money, and that's sort of the game. So there's little or no fixed costs. So they say, you're not costing us anything to really be with us, aside from a dispensing fee. There's generally a rebate share, but it's generally not all of the rebates that they receive. They oftentimes negotiate a price with the drug manufacturer, and maybe a different price with the pharmacist, and maybe even supply a different price to the member, so sort of moving there. A lot of the PBMs own and operate their own mail order pharmacy, which is a very high margin business, so they convert people to different drugs that they want and send that out. And one of the tenets of our relationship with United Healthcare today is that in exchange for getting the rebates, they're reducing our fixed costs, our administration fee. And I'll walk you through what the numbers look like on that. But so that's the traditional PBM model. It's, again, sort of a shell game so that customers can't really necessarily find out what the true cost of everything is. And our job is to get to lowest net unit cost in everything for you and help you understand that you're making a good business decision. If you want to stay with the traditional model, that's great. But you have to make a conscious business decision to be there. I would also say that it's only been about the last 10-ish years that we've had a new model come onto the scene, and that's called the transparent PBM model. The transparent PBM model, generally speaking, is a model that's been adopted, started, implemented through either co-ops of employer groups or healthcare systems, generally not publicly traded. They actually charge an admin fee. So they say, here's our cost to do the work, but in exchange for that, whatever we've negotiated, good, bad, or otherwise, we pass 100% through. All revenues, all expenses. It's a transparent environment. So we know exactly what we're paying them. And instead of chasing the rebates or being grateful that we saved $350 on that shopping trip, they're focusing on the cost of the goods today, trying to get to a lower cost than that $250 in my example there. So the other thing is that, generally speaking, these types of PBMs open their books at any time to their customers, so that we could say, boy, this looks a little fuzzy. We're not exactly sure we're getting the deals that we're supposed to be getting. There's no apprehension on their part of opening their books. In the other model, generally, there's a fairly substantial level of resistance. So I'm just contrasting the models out there. So our current relationship is with United Healthcare and Optum Rx. Optum Rx is a conglomeration of a number of PBMs that United Healthcare purchased over the last 5 to 8 years. So United Healthcare used to have a contract with a company called Medco, and then what they did was they changed that relationship and brought it in-house, and they had a small PBM, and then they bought a couple of other PBMs, and they've rebranded it, and they've come to all their customers and said, now that you're a United Healthcare customer, you automatically get our Optum RX prescription services, and they operate under a traditional PBM model, okay? So during our request for proposal, we analyzed 4 other pharmacy benefit managers. And candidly, we focused in on the transparent models, we focused in on customer service, and we focused in on minimal membership disruption, because what we want is the least amount of disruption for the greatest amount of potential savings. Because if we were to implement a plan that causes all sorts of disruption to your members, we may lose the savings just because of goodwill. And so when we're talking about disruption, let me just talk about let me define that for you. Every one of these pharmacy benefit managers has their own, what we call P&T committee, Pharmacy and Therapy Committee, that develops these lists and bases their decision onto what to include on their lists based on what they believe is either the lowest net cost to the member with the best efficacy of the drug, or in some cases, what the rebate share is coming from the manufacturer. And so, when we talk about disruption, what I want to just make very clear is, and we'll share some statistics with you about disruption, is that it generally never means your people can't get the drug they need. They may be asked to change to a different name drug in that category, but if you think, for instance, of things like Nexium. Nexium was the purple pill. The purple pill cost $650. The generic companion to that statistically, the medical journals say over 90% of the US public can take, costs $15. So the preference there is really helping. The other thing that we're looking for is a partner who can help us manage our trend and educate our employees so that under a high deductible health plan, they're not showing up at the pharmacy and saying, oh, I can't afford this drug because it costs too much. We want that to be put in a position of getting the lowest cost, highest, most effective choices there as well. So that's when we talk about disruption. Now, what also occurred was, as a result of this analysis, United Healthcare sharpened their pencil. And you'll find out that it's fairly significant. So one thing that I think as a team we'd like to tell you is, this is just a decision of better or best, because there are significant cost savings as a result of this exercise right now, okay? So that's the good news, and what we have is right up on the screen there. So our current annual cost, trailing 12 months, is about $4.5 million. Yes, Joe?
Tell me what's in that cost. Does that include the medications also, or is that just the infrastructure, the disbursement of?
Great question. That's an all-in cost. So that's a cost for any administrative fees, the disbursement of, and all medications. And that is a gross cost that's split between the district and its employees.
What percentage is medication in that?
Oh, medication is 98%. You pay about $40,000 worth of fixed cost for dispensing the drug. So, yeah, it's 99% of the cost, okay? So, as a result of this exercise, and this is this is what we do, and with the direction of your team, we got offers from the rest of the marketplace, and we went back to Optum, and we said, you need to improve your offer. And please improve your offer. You're well off the pace. And so They improved their offers such that with the plan year beginning September of 2017, and that's what we're talking about in terms of time frame. Decision point for you later. You will see a reduction in cost of about $400,000 if you were to stay with Optum. How does that occur? Well, remember I said this is sort of a shell game, so it gets fairly complicated, but I'll try to distill it. Today, they don't share rebates with us, or they share a small fraction of rebates, but they give us a credit on our administrative fees. What we've negotiated is to have them share 80% of the rebates, which is the most they'll share, instead of giving you that the administrative free credit. Now, this does beg the question, and trust me, we've asked on behalf of the district. Where's this $400,000 been for the last couple of years? Okay, we've asked the question. There's really no good answer to that. But you need to know we've asked the question. So you go, how can they? So it's not necessarily a reduction in drug costs. It's not. They're not managing trend any better. They found the silver bullet to help all your employees reduce their spend. They're just moving money around, okay? And they've agreed to share more of their profit with the district. That's the bottom line.
So how many employees, or how many covered employees do we have right now? I mean, paying premium paying employees?
About 1,360. 1,000
On the plan,
on the plan?
Yeah.
1,050?
yeah, 1,300 are
Okay,
eligible.
okay,
So our
1,300.
our drug care costs are around 4,000, 4,100 per. Divide the numbers out.
Per
Yeah,
employee.
roughly.
Well, and I guess that's with retirees up there, the 1,050 is not retirees.
Yeah.
Costs.
Those numbers include retiree costs.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, that's total spend on pharmacy.
Right.
Our active spend is about,
So when I look at what you're saying, and I don't want to interrupt your presentation, you've done a
please.
very good job. I mean, I look at it, when we talk about the Affordable Care Act, whether we want to call it the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, or Trump Care, whatever it becomes, the drug companies were restricted in the markup, or the insurance companies were restricted in the markup, overhead markup of their services. So as a percentage of, when they provided insurance, they could only have so much overhead. In other words, but
In a fully insured environment, they were, but in a self-insured environment, they were not.
okay, but either way, I mean, they could set up a separate company like this and channel other profits in other ways, just like power companies have transmission. The transmission companies now are less regulated than the power companies. So this is another way for them to generate profits. United Healthcare, when they were being restricted on the other end through the Affordable Care Act, they could generate profits through these prescription drug entities.
Optum is the single largest entity within the United Health Group family of companies, generating profit at a more rapid pace than any other of their.
And looking at the model, I mean, there's really no incentive for them to reduce costs, because if they're looking at the model with the rebates, like you talked about the rebates, actually using higher cost drugs probably generates more profits for them. And us as being self-insured, we're just picking up the tab.
We're, in some respects, that kind of model could actually get employees hooked on a higher cost drug and remain on that drug for a longer period of time. And you would be paying the vast majority of the freight as.
Yeah, well, when we say we're picking up the tab, our employees are picking up the tab, one way or
Yeah,
another. It comes off of our cost of labor. So also the other part is, when we talk about these drugs, and Nexium would be an example, what you're saying is that there must be a service that analyzes a drug change and says, okay, there was Nexium, and now they have a new one that's something else that's slightly different, but there's not enough data to support going from Nexium to drug B. Drug B is way more expensive because they could change the formula a little bit, file for a new patent, and they got drug B, and Nexium's not so good anymore. And that's been happening a lot in the pharmaceutical industry, correct?
Absolutely.
So in order to avoid that, we've come up with a system where we can get a more educated review of the prescriptions that we use and be able to explain to our employees why this one is a better choice than that one.
I believe that in the transparent model, the motives become aligned. Vendor motives are totally aligned. Because we're simply paying them an administrative fee to do all the work. And if they don't do the work well, guess what? They get fired. There is no general motive alignment under the traditional PBM model. Because we want to help you and your employees reduce the health care. That's what the transparent model does as well. But the traditional models doesn't necessarily have the same alignment.
Okay, so if we were to make the transition from Optimum to some other provider, we won't say
Some other
which,
provider.
some other provider, it's easier to say it that way. We're gonna have issues with United Healthcare in terms of what they'll be charging us going forward.
They'll charge us more. And so the net numbers that you see there are a result of them saying, sorry, district, we lost profit margin over here, so we're gonna charge you, we're gonna charge you more for the benefit of making a business decision. That's, we've had that conversation with United Healthcare. So the numbers that you see up on the screen are all net of those increased costs.
So we should be bidding out the services that United Healthcare provides as well.
And we do plan on doing that. We're doing these in phases, so next year at this time, we will be talking about what the market's offering us in terms of our overall healthcare plan. Whether Optum is still part of the UHC thing, at that point, I think we bid it all out. But if we make a move to whoever, next year we're scheduled to bid out, and that's our schedule, our team that meets, healthcare.
Tacoma?
Yeah, why couldn't we move that up and have them parallel, like?
We talked about that, but we just didn't think we had time to effectively do that. And the biggest concern I have in making that transition is the decision going to be made fast enough so we can educate our staff before they leave for the summer? Because if we fail in that, trying to educate them on August 15th or whatever, we just didn't think was a.
What about if we looked at it a different way, where we say, instead of accepting the increase in administrative fee, we say we'll delay bidding out for an additional year? Instead of saying, go ahead and charge us more, we'll say, well, look, you've already charged us a lot. It's pretty much transparent to us that we've been paying a premium. We don't see a reason to increase for the next 2 years, actually. And if that's the case, then we'll have to bid it out, almost immediately, as quickly as we can, as we feel comfortable with.
Yeah, and my response would be that I think Darren said that you all, because these conversations are still going on with both United and others, so that we could bring to you how that conversation, by the way, we totally understand and agree with hostage by additional costs. And I would go on record to say that we've had that conversation with United multiple times before we bring to you.
Yeah, well, I just think that part of our leverage is whether they be protected from competition relative to what the services that we're going to ask them to continue to provide. I mean, we've done that in the past where we say, well, we'll extend we'll extend your service conditioned upon this change taking place and us not seeing additional charges relative to the change. That might work and be actually in the best interest of both parties, the district and United Healthcare.
Yeah, and I would just echo Darren's, we've had a lot of conversation as a team. We have a lot of moving parts with your clinic and the data integration. In terms of implementation, we think about September, we think that that's a long time away, but as Darren said, quality communication has to roll out to April. So we're on a very short on-ramp. And so that's why we actually wanted to bring this to you with the thought that, okay, this could be very well be a win-win. It could be a win for the employees now under a high deductible health plan, getting that $150 worth of goods instead of a $250. By the way, your employees don't see the rebates. Well, and then potentially have that change now, and then next year with full court press on the whole thing, see what that looks like, and then stage that next evaluation and change.
I guess the question I have, though, is you're leading me to believe that Nexum would probably be a recommended alternative to what we're currently doing as a specific supplier.
I think their model is, as a self-funded employer, the transparent model, there's benefits to that. Now, whether we're perfectly aligned to make that change now in terms of UHC and Optum being one, that's one of the things we're going to be continuing to iron out over the next month.
Well, I just want to be clear of one thing. I mean, we got the transparent model and we got our existing situation. There's a number of providers for the transparent model.
Correct.
And that of those providers you've looked at, Nexum seems to be Navitus, is that the name? Yeah, I'm sorry,
that's
Navitus.
Fine.
Yeah, Nexum is the drug. Yeah, Navitus.
That's all right.
Yeah, sorry.
One pill for everything.
Thank you.
Navitus.
It's a silver bullet
If it was
now,
just
not
that
the
simple.
purple.
Thanks, Joe, for that correction.
Yeah.
This one supplier called Navitus is apparently, you haven't found any negatives have you investigated deeply or had a previous experience with this particular supplier?
We've had many accounts
How about other vendors of this model? Have you had clients move to other vendors?
Yes, we have, and they've had success as well.
Would you be willing to say what those vendors were? Were they some of the vendors that you looked for comparison?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There is some, future, later slide in the presentation, there's a why Navitus slide that we'll get to here in a minute, but
So when does
that
our,
might help answer
when,
that question.
when can we free ourselves of United Healthcare on this particular service?
Question?
How fast can we free ourselves of United Healthcare on this particular service?
September 1st.
That's the fastest we can be free of them?
Because we've got implementation time. What we'd want to do is we need to have communication, we need to have ramp up, we need to have proper communication to the members who may be disrupted with the preferred formularies of a new vendor versus the current vendor, so that they have ample time to work with their doctors leading up to September 1st, that over the next 4 months, please work with your doctor to try this out, and, with the caveat that if there is a highly complicated medical situation, that's on an exception basis that has some crazy.
There are exceptions allowed within the, because you do run into that.
There are pharmacists on staff who evaluate these situations, and we have seen that happen. It's not by the dozens, but it's there as a safety net for individuals who may be in the middle of maybe someone's in the middle of a significant oncology, a chemotherapy treatment, and
Just can't change.
it's
Yeah.
not the best for the member to change. And so those situations are evaluated on an exception basis. And it is by the ones, it's not en masse.
So in those cases, does the district end up saying, approving, or does the transparent company come to the district and say, look, this is gonna happen and there's gonna be an extra cost for this that
Yeah,
you're gonna?
what they would say is that we would ask them for a judgment, a clinical judgment. Say, based on your expertise, impartial pharmacist, drug therapy that is on your preferred list or the drug therapy that they want to continue, in your opinion, what do you think the pros and cons are? How would you advise us, and what's the additional cost? As the plan, be able to make that
So in the end, the district would have the final decision?
plan, yeah. As the plan, you have the final decision. You could abdicate that final decision too. Their P&T committee.
Okay. Any other questions for anybody?
So,
Mr. Como?
yeah,
If we were to go with one of these more transparent companies or approaches, I would assume that it'd probably be maybe just a one-year contract so that we could eventually align everything so that we're trying to get all of the services at some point in time aligned so we have appropriate leverage. I understand why you want to kind of take the pharmaceutical portion now and then the rest of it next year potentially.
that's possible, but what I would say to you is the solution that we would recommend to you when we come back or whenever the group gets the final recommendation would be a solution that, irrespective of what happens with the medical, would be something that you could run on for the next 5 to 10 years, based on
So
what
the
we've seen in market.
pharmaceutical would be 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, so,
10-year
so we
solution.
wouldn't say that you're gonna sign that length of a contract, but our recommendation would be such that we would think that that company would be a
Okay.
good partner for that period of time. And it
Gotcha.
is mutually exclusive to whatever we do on the medical. So think of this as the first step and the medical as the second step, and they sort of run independently but are integrated. Today, we actually they're running independently, they just happen to be owned by the same company.
My point is I think we lose some leverage when they're independent of one another as opposed to taken together. So is there going to be some point in time where we do want to take them
There-
together? And that's a strategy that we
There
have to
isn't any
talk
leverage because of the lack of transparency. I mean, if you, the way it's structured, we don't really get any leverage by having them together. We actually have more leverage by taking them apart. And because now United Healthcare has to stand on their own as simply the services they provide, separate from this benefit that they're capitalizing on now. And, it's more clear what we're paying for. And therefore, we have more leverage to negotiate with them because we have more knowledge about what we're paying for versus what we didn't have before. So our leverage actually increases if we proceed with separating the two, I believe.
I believe that the leverage, if you're separate, either is equal or better. And I would also say that if you're separate, you now have a partner on the pharmacy side whose sole purpose and sole existence is to help the district and its employees manage the pharmacy spend. It's not clouded by anything else. They have to perform well. So the numbers that we're showing you here are really the ones that we can quantify on paper, but we do believe that there's some additional benefit likely in terms of just the management of your overall drug spend that will benefit the district and its employees.
Mine was more of a temporal comment, so timing. So I don't know if that makes a difference as opposed to organizational. A number of or taking them at different times. So it was a temporal.
Yeah, and so what I would say is, if we do anything at a future date, it will still line up to this timing of September 1st, because that's our date.
So just to recap that slide, at a minimum, we're looking at $400,000. That's what I want you to take away from this slide, just by going through this process. I think we're in a better position than we were. In terms of leverage, I don't know in the world of health insurance how much leverage we ever truly have, but I think we're in a good spot to be having this conversation. And when Benico brought this forward, we thought we at least need to, spend this meeting in March debating the best strategy on all this. That's why we're bringing you this information tonight. You'll have a month to consider it and knock it around, and we'll be gathering additional information as well.
Well, I would expect, because of the time frame involved, that, we should be able to get a recommendation to us for the March meeting.
That's our goal.
Yeah,
is to bring
because, if it's about, I'd rather have our employees know sooner rather than later
Correct.
why they're still here during the school year, so they don't feel like we sprung something on them, as they're,
Exactly.
you know how it goes. It's better to give them time to adjust, react, and interface with us over it. We still have employees that might have concerns, and retirees, as a matter of fact. So I think both of them are.
And Melissa does that for us, but having gone through health insurance changes in the past with other districts, I can show you the scars still from the quick decisions on these things, and it really, it takes away from the savings or whatever your goal was in the change. You forget about what you may have saved after a few hundred phone calls and people calling you from Walgreens without coverage, those types of things. So that's why we're pushing it now, not that we're not pushing it, otherwise I would have had it as an action item. But we're gonna go over a schedule here that we really wanna hit to be able to roll out whatever we do well. And if it stays with Optum, it'll come to you as an information item next year next meeting, because we're staying with who we're with. If it's a change to someone else, then it'll be an action item more than likely next month.
Yeah, well, I think even if we said it's approved pending a 60-day review, feedback from the employees, how long would it take us to get enough information out to our employees so that they could give feedback to administration about any concerns they would have once we made that
I don't necessarily
decision?
know that was a part of the plan. That's generally not what happens. What generally happens is.
It's an informational campaign.
Is an informational campaign that says, we're now at, March 15th or April 1st, and be advised that in 5 months, you have 5 months to talk to your doctor. Here are the individuals who are affected. Here are the drugs that are affected. They'd get personal letters indicating, talk with your doctor about this. And you know what the fact of the matter is? Many of them may find out that they can convert to a different drug at a lower cost, and they didn't even know. So it's an education and information campaign. We generally don't recommend feedback from the employees as to whether or not they influence this decision or not. We haven't had a group
Do that.
do that over
Okay,
the last.
maybe I didn't put that in the right way, but what I'm saying is, we would need feedback to measure the impact. The impact will be measured at some time.
We already know the impact. It's 4.4% of all prescriptions.
Describe impact, because impact sounds much more severe than what.
Again, 4.4% of the prescriptions that are now being dispensed through United Healthcare would be dispensed at a higher cost or be a non-covered drug under one of these others, but there would be a substitute drug. Again, the Nexium is a perfect example. $650, $15. There's probably 2 or 3 alternatives in between. Crestor is another one for high blood, or for high cholesterol. Crestor is used by your people. There are probably 4 or 5 other drugs that are much less costly than Crestor, that again, a high percentage of the U.S. population. So that's, when we talk about we're talking about change It might be positive, but at least for our reporting purposes and our evaluation, we call it disruption because it is change. But, so there's about 36,000 prescriptions annually dispensed for your employees. 4.4% of them would be affected in this transaction. So that is the analysis that we've already completed.
And one other thing on that previous slide, I forgot to mention that $400,000, that is shared between the district and the employees. That's just not the district recouping that. So as we were talking about this, we were really believing that, you know, the move to the high deductible health plan was a solid one. And this is just a natural continuation of that consumerism conversation that I'm sure you had when you decided to go to that high deductible health plan.
Mr. Como?
Do any of your clients ever cut out the middleman altogether and just take this on themselves?
Gosh, that would be great. There's two things that I think would really improve the healthcare delivery system. One would be the elimination of healthcare networks. Similar to the PBM, you have people negotiating, middle people negotiating the price so we can buy it. If we could just buy it on our own, that would be great. Same thing with healthcare. United Healthcare has this network, and Anthem has a network, and they negotiate prices, and then we're driven through their pricing structure. If we just had access on the pricing alone, we'd be consumers, just like we do for everything else in our lives. But it's not the way it works. One of the challenges, I did have one client at one time that thought they were going to do that. They had about 50,000 employees. They had pharmacists on staff, but they felt that they had a $200 million drug spend, and they felt that the liability was still too great.
Fair enough.
Because they're making the decision around what are we going to approve. And if you don't abdicate that responsibility to a third party around a preferred list for MS drugs and oncology drugs and hepatitis C and life and death kind of treatment, that could be the liability of the district. So that's,
So you'd recommend us not to go that route?
I would recommend that we align ourselves with a quality PBM.
Fair enough. Had to ask the question, though.
Great question, though. You got a little extra editorial for no extra credit.
Well, I think the complexity of drugs and, you know, all the stuff that you do with chemotherapy and all the things that they do by drugs nowadays, it's kind of hard to imagine a company or anyone taking that on themselves. So that's the reason why it is as non-transparent as it has become. And for me, I think the sooner we move forward with it, the better, whatever that plan and path is. And of course, we need to have an approval discussion and vote, I guess, on it. But I don't want to see a delay in getting the message out and implementing the program. If we're going to change, we should change quickly. But we ought to decide on that next meeting at the earliest, I guess.
Yeah, you want to should we fast forward to the timeline? Here's what we're knocking around in terms of a rough, and we're here tonight in February to, approval if there is a change. If it's status quo, there's nothing really for the committee to take action on. And then Melissa has meetings with staff in March and April, just as a normal process of benefit education, et cetera. So we would piggyback on those meetings in March and April. As I'm sure you all know, once you get into mid-May on, communicating effectively with staff with all the things going on at the end of the year is nearly impossible. You can do it, and if it is possible, it's not very effective, I don't think. So we would like to have that completed well before the end of the year. As Jeff mentioned, give staff 4 or 5 months for the people in the unique situations that really have to do some research with their physician. Give them that time over the summer to prepare for the transition date in September, and then we would, have our normal. We just had our review in January this year, but then we would get back in our normal cycle of reviewing our overall health strategy. So that's what we're hoping to do. Again, I think as Kurt mentioned, how you roll these things out is just as important as the net fiscal result or the service result. So that's what we have in mind.
So I assume you're working with some other school districts in Wisconsin? So are we one of the larger ones, or is there ones that are much larger that are working with you, or, I mean, how, I mean,
Yeah, you're, as far as claims cost and number, you're on the mid to high end. But we have many, many private sector clients, your size.
and a quick question on who's paying what. I mean, we've been moving towards the retirees picking up more and more of their, what ratio are they at now on their premium? Are they starting to see it, and have you gotten, nobody's noticed yet?
Not really, I meet with them every year as well, and
Okay.
they are seeing the impact of the high deductible, but their deductibles.
So when we look at this particular item, I mean, the value to them is greater than the value to our regular employees, because they're, per person, they're spending quite a bit more for prescription health care than our regular employees are.
Happens as you get older.
Well, I mean, it's nice that we're picking a cost factor, and the cost, by reducing the cost, it actually favors the retirees more, and they need more favor because we're asking them to pick up more of the cost because of the extra costs associated, so. Okay,
We skipped this slide, but the state of Wisconsin is a Navitus provider, and they have, obviously by the numbers, the bullets there kind of in the middle. So they must be providing some level of service and benefit to the state. The 4.4% is the disruption report that Jeff touched on. But the other information, I think with the feedback we've gotten, I don't know if there's any other critical points that we need to cover. I think we got some guidance on
No,
how
I
to
think
proceed.
This frame you can look at, but upper left is member satisfaction, lower left is gross profit per claim compared to the big guys, and then upper right is trend numbers. So the 4-year cumulative prescription drug trend, and you see what
Or the orange.
pie chart just gives you a breakdown of their membership based on government sector, municipal, they're a significant provider nationally to
any further questions? Otherwise, it'll be a really long night tonight, so. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, we
Thank you very
we
much.
appreciate the time. I'm sure when you ran for school board, you weren't picturing talking about PBMs and on those types of topics, but we are doing our due diligence, and we'll come up with the best recommendation we can come up with, so, thank you guys.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Yep. Okay, that takes care of item number one on the information items. Now we can go back to the action items, approval of monthly vouchers. Mr. Clark?
Had a few questions, responded to those. I don't know if there's any other questions that anyone had that I can try to answer. Sherry's on a cruise, so I don't feel sorry for her if she's not here. She's enjoying her vacation, but all those questions were responded to.
Well, just to cover some of those questions, I mean, I sent in a bunch of questions just to get broader depth of what some of the charges were. Darren gave me back a summary of, a different way of looking at it with more of a summary. We had the security, there's a security charge in there that when you add them all up, and what that was for the keyed service. That was one of them that
Yes.
popped out. One of them was for Beneco. yeah.
Beneco, asking the spend to date and their annual contract. One of them was repair costs, anticipated repair costs associated with the iPads. That's about $200,000. Oftentimes that's shared with the student and the district though, depending on the situation.
Guys, I got them right here, I guess I'll just go through. The Secure Tech, the year-to-date expenses is 45,122. Beneco year-to-date expenses is 78,750 with an annual cost of 105,000. You know, if we were going to try and do this kind of work on our own, we'd need to hire an expert in that area, so I guess that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
Lad Lake, tuition is 24.27 on the mean per student when there's 1,000 remainder of the year. The Asset Genie is the cost of iPad repairs, which is first occurrence. We sometimes have a portion billed back for repair percentages to the students based on frequency. So first occurrence, $30, second, 60, third, 100.
And on that one, we used to have insurance, but we got rid of that, so we're still far ahead, right, of doing the repairs ourselves versus the insurance?
I don't think the insurance is, I'm not gonna say it's never the best approach, but on a cost basis, that's the best approach either. I think what we have here, actually, I've never thought of the scale idea. I think that's a good approach as well.
Well, you know, the other thing is, you know, it doesn't seem like it's, if someone's experienced in the art of repairing an iPad, it doesn't seem like it's that complex of once you know how to do it, and compared to.
Send them to Kurt.
Depend on fixing a transmission, you'd think the guy in his basement could probably do it and make a lot of money, so. Waukesha water utility was the other thing. How much did we save, you know, after, one of the big things from the Siemens thing was money that we saved in water. 14, 15, we would have, and 15, 16, we wouldn't have had the full savings. We're just
Right.
starting to see the savings. But in 14, 15, our water utility was 115,000, and in 15, 16, it was 102,250. So we're saving so far 13 grand. But
Yeah, and I think once we have this fiscal year completed, you'll really be able to measure two benchmarks, solid benchmarks, 2 full years, so,
and
provide that later.
the other one was you achieved 3,000. Just what is it? This reading intervention program, tailored to Lexile reading level, which I don't know what that means. I'm not on the
CNI, TNL.
TNL, teaching and whatever. And then the Waukesha String Academy, how many students are in that? There's 14 beginner students and 30 continuing students. And then the other one was the number of 403B benders. I saw a lot of names in there. I thought, well,
Yeah, we're at
time to cut back here.
Yeah, we were at 17. We've probably, I guess we're at the little beyond the midpoint of that process of getting down to a more manageable number.
Well, those were the things I asked about. Mr. Como?
I move to approve the vouchers as presented.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Would you note that Mr. McCaffrey's not here in case anybody's looking at minutes later on?
Yes, I'll note that Mr. McCaffrey is absent today, and it's an excused absence. And so we may have a tie vote like the Supreme Court. Who knows,
Yeah.
right?
I brought a quarter, so
4-0.
we're good.
Passes 4-0. Now we have the budget amendment as our next action item, 2016-2017 budget amendment, which I believe there's a white paper laying on your desk that's somewhat related to this.
Yeah, a better layout, or I guess a flow from our initial budget to what we're asking the revision. This is all tied to the settlement from the OPEB legal action, and then the debt we have associated with that in Fund 38. If you recall, in our deliberations in finalizing the 16-17 budget that was approved in October, we had set aside fund balance to make a early principal and interest payment, and I think was saving around $150,000 or somewhere in that nature. The settlement came in December, so this budget amendment, really what you're doing is recognizing the receipt of that settlement and the payoff of that debt in total. In the white sheet, I started out with Fund 38's revenues and expenses. The variances are in the middle, and then where we end up. So in Fund 10, you'll recognize the settlement coming in, the $5.5 million. accounting-wise, we need to transfer money from Fund 10 to 38 to make the payment. So taking what we'd already budgeted, we need to make a budget transfer from Fund 10 to Fund 38 in just shy of $1.9 million. And then in the bottom section there, you can see where the state trust fund loan, the principal payments, STFL, those are the ones related to this. You can see where those are jumping to show the payoff. And then the next page, I think Mr. O'Brien, when we talked about this prior, asked about our existing debt in Fund 38, and that's what the second page is. The bottom part is what we're paying off, so I just Xed that out or redlined it. And then the top part is what would still be remaining in Fund 38. That's not tied to the OPEB issue at all. So I would ask approval of this budget amendment, which, as I mentioned, authorizes the administration to go ahead with the payoff of the debt. And by paying off this debt early, we're saving $286,000 in interest expense. So that's my report.
Any questions?
I'll move that we approve the budget amendment as presented.
I have a second.
Second?
Second, Mr. Como. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? None opposed. Motion passes 4-0. Again, Mr. McCaffrey's absent. Next item, approval of transportation contract.
We do have on the agenda an executive session. This is something that we've been knocking around since fall. I think it's been on the finance and facilities agenda 3 times, once in closed session, then last month in January, we had some further discussions. And at the January meeting, the committee asked or gave me 2 points to go back and work on. One of them was to set up a threshold if our enrollment would go down or if our funding would go down via state legislation. Essentially a shift in the revenue limit authority that the board has. So in section 10, which is on page 4 of the packet, about 3/4 of the way down, is that language that was requested. I tied it not only to pupil count, but also funding level. You don't know what the state's gonna do, so it kind of protects us both ways. And I've used 5% loss in resident enrollment or 5% loss in revenue authority in years 3, 4, or 5 to do a reopener. There's termination contract also, or language in this contract, so you also have that. But the reopener would allow us to negotiate just a rate adjustment. So I think we accomplished that. The other part of the request was, in the contract, there's what I call the efficiency clause. I'm not sure if that's the official name, but what it's become known as. And the committee asked that we recalibrate that efficiency clause because it was really based on when first student came to the district. I think they bid on like 135 or 140 routes. They quickly reduced it to, I think we're around 105. It fluctuates very slightly, but so that was incorporated in. So on the back of the packet, this sheet here, and at the bottom, the yellow section is the old efficiency clause, and the orange section is the recalibrated efficiency clause. And what we've done, if you look at the far right-hand, the percent change column, the far right-hand side, for those lower thresholds, the 115 or higher thresholds, I guess depending on how you look at it, 115 to 119 routes, we've actually diminished what that efficiency clause would pay. Again, forcing down, some pressure, economic pressure to have them maintain that lower number of routes, and then increasing their return if they get down to, 95 to 99. Do I ever foresee a situation where we're at 84 routes? I don't know, but it's on there. We'd need a bigger boardroom probably, at least the first few years. So again, I think we addressed those 2. Also on that page, so those 2 criteria that the F&F committee gave me last time we talked about this, and on that page, right in the middle of the page, the routes or rates themselves on the base rates, and not everything is tied to this, but is a 2.65% increase in year 1 and then 2% thereafter. but in the middle of the page is really what the budget impact is. So in the first year, it would be just over a 3% increase, and then 1.83% roughly the next 4 years. So all of this has been reviewed by Bulow Vetter a couple of times. So I think unless there's questions, you know, the administration is certainly recommending approval at this point.
Mr. Como?
I appreciate you addressing a couple things, a couple points. I don't remember if it was last month or the month before.
I'm losing
Gave
track.
it
I was gonna
a
go back
charge.
and
I think
look,
it's
and
a couple months ago. Yeah, I think those are handled well. I think, Mr. O'Brien, you were most concerned about our enrollment and our losing of our revenue potentially. So I think that was handled to your satisfaction, or at least from my point of view. Whether 5%'s the right number or not, I think is a pretty good number. Maybe we want to talk about if it should be 5% or different. I'm feeling pretty comfortable with that. Overall, too, I appreciate the summary that you gave us so we can really see what the true percentage is, the budget impact percentage. You know, overall, the services, again, have been excellent, and the relationship has been good. Is that correct?
yeah, very good. And I think I wasn't part of it, but the service has improved from what we've had, from what I've heard in my experiences, but also the financial impact of this change is reaping a reward of over $1 million each year for this school district that we otherwise would have been spending on transportation in lieu of, you know, countless other programs. So no concerns on our behalf at all.
And being involved with route changes and that being a transparent process, that was an issue with our previous provider. That's
Right.
all been rectified in that.
Yeah, we have complete access to the routes. We have someone on staff who helps monitor those, someone with, you know, a lengthy background in transportation. So it's completely open, and the conversations we have with the leadership over at First Student is very open as well.
Other comments or a motion? Como?
I will move to approve the contract as, contract amendments as presented.
Second.
Karen seconds.
Oh, good.
She waved faster than you did.
Here, a wave.
Can't hear a wave.
Yeah, well, she was trying to say. So, motion is from Mr. Como, second by Mr. Ronachek. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. And Mr. McCaffrey's not present.
All right.
Okay, that takes care of our action items for today. Let's move right on to our information items, which is the monthly budget update. Are we on budget?
Yes.
Mr. Clark? Well, that's good.
And the biggest news in January, obviously, is the receipt of our first property tax payments, which came in at just over $36 million. The other methods or things you check for is our percent of budget spent at the same time last year. How are we comparing to this year? In every regard, salaries and benefits, which is obviously about 80% of our operational budget. This year, we're at just under 46%, and last year we were at just over 46%. So those are the trends that we're looking for when we're analyzing it. Purchase services, which is transportation, utilities, and countless other things. This year we've spent 31.1%. Last year, 30.5% of budget. So again, that there's nothing jumping out at us as a odd trend or something that we need to be concerned about. Capital objects does have a variance between that percent of budget expended comparison, but that's all tied to the timing of projects when you get into that object range. Not so much, you know, it's not like a utility bill where you get a bill every month. It's when is the project completed. Fund 27, we received $907,000 of grant reimbursements. We were having issues, and it wasn't just our school district. WISE Grants is a new reporting method to ask for reimbursements. We finally got it ironed out with the state, so that we got kind of an influx of cash that we should have been receiving probably a little earlier. And then even in Fund 27, we're very close, 40% to 43% of budget expended. The detailed reports there, also the breakdown of tax levy collections there, the comparison from the prior year, so I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Como?
Just from a cash flow perspective, it's good that we received our tax payments in January. And I think we made it through without having to touch our line of credit, is that correct?
Correct.
So the projections there was good, so that's excellent. Still have it in case we need it, but we probably won't need to tap into it, right? As we'll have 2 more payments coming in, tax payments coming in, so we should be pretty good for the rest of
Right.
the year.
The next time you most likely would have to would be in late June. So, but we're not foreseeing the need to access that line of credit. But that's normally the January and June are the timelines of needing those funds, if you are in that situation. But again, we don't foresee ourselves being there.
Okay.
Things,
budget, we get to accrue it, so we.
we are,
I don't think they've done that much anymore.
no, it's been a while.
Okay.
No, that was one benefit of, I think that improved under the present governor, because he got the balance of payments. The deficit that seemed to always be growing year after year went down quite a bit. Okay, anything else to report on that? Mr. Clark, okay, let's move on to our next information item, Neola guidelines.
Yeah, about a year ago this time, the board authorized the administration to begin work with Neola to review our board policies. And at that time, the board asked that, because it's policies, but then you also have administrative guidelines that go hand in hand with that. And the guidelines are more the day-to-day types of information that we use to make decisions in the district. At the time, though, I remember the board asking, before we proceed with that, just bring it back. We don't know how the process is going to go with Neola. And so I'm bringing it back just as an information item. I think from everything I've heard, the Neola process went very well on the policy side of it. So we see no reason not to move ahead with the guidelines. I copied or attached to your executive summary the budget that was laid out when we were initially talking with Neola, and the circled area is where we are today, looking at implementing the guidelines. But this is a good document. A lot of vendors don't provide you a multi-year budget projection unless you beg them for it. But it allows you to see what our spend's going to be. And once these things are in place, the spend for the size of district we are is not, not all that much, I don't think, for the functionality that we'll gain. So I didn't know if you had questions or concerns, but I thought I'd bring it back just to have us talk about it if we needed to.
Mr. Como?
Yeah, just a comment. The Neola process has been everything that when this vendor presented to us and we were considering utilizing them, I think they've done an excellent job fulfilling the contract so far. It's been a lot of hard work. They've worked extremely well with our policy committee. And our administration's kind of chomping at the bit, so to say, to get moving on the guidelines portion of it. And I think if they're as good as they are with the policy, the way they worked on the policy, the administrative guidelines should go smoothly. And, we've had our administrators so, integrated into this process. It's really the natural next step here. And Neola's done, I think, a really good job.
Any other comments? I'd just say, it's hard for me to measure Neola, but I would say that our policy committee and the administration have done a good job of, going through this process. And maybe the board's also done a good job where we've just kind of tried to make it so it's practical as we move through this, instead of each one being reviewed item by item, so. Any other questions? Okay, that takes care of Neola. the exciting one, the South High School cafeteria project.
Yeah, last month I had hoped to have a nice budget in final drawings and everything in a box ready to put the bow on it. But as we got going in the timeline and the potential scope of work, we decided to hold off. I have verified with everyone that holding off till we get formal approval till the first week of March, I believe it's the 8th, is fine in terms of us meeting our timelines, because I'm sure the board has the expectation that that cafeteria is open for the first day of school and that things will function at a high level come next school year. So what we have been doing, Epstein's been helping us through the process, but what we've really accomplished since the last time we spoke is the selection of the construction management firm. I believe it was a Friday update I had sent out, or maybe it was the last board committee pack, I can't remember what. The RFP that we sent out to 8 vendors, construction firms. We wanted to get out there early because there's a lot of construction going on, in particular a lot of school stuff going on. They're building condos in Milwaukee, so the market's pretty busy right now. We've selected Findorf. Again, I've not signed a contract until I get approval from the board. So, but we did go through an interview process. The results of the bid process are attached. So we have our construction management firm and our architect in place. The architect is working with a consultant, a kitchen consultant, to come up with a plan. And then I laid out for you what's going to happen between now and when we meet again and the benchmarks. It's a pretty quick schedule, but I honestly think sometimes a tighter schedule makes you make decisions faster and you move quickly and you're more agile. So there's the layout of what we'll be doing. We'll have that initial kind of scope drawing, not a detailed drawing, to allow us to bid out the skilled trades and those types of things. So when we come back in March, we'll have firm budget numbers for you to consider. Keep in mind, we've also put a placeholder in the budget. We did that last fall. So that part of it's already kind of, but we don't know what the scope's going to be. It's a kitchen that hasn't, the building was built in the 50s, so you don't always know what you're going to find. But we should be ready for a March 6th meeting, I think, is finance for your consideration. Otherwise, I can answer any questions about process or timeline.
Mr. Como?
Just one quick question. We're looking at potentially spending $1 million total on this process, maybe a little bit more, but $1 million out of, what's the,
Just shy of 2.2,
out of
towards
the,
the bottom of the page, yeah.
yeah, so out of the Fund 50 it is, right? So we still would have like 1.2 million left in that, and DPI is putting pressure on us to bring that down to 0, isn't it?
I don't know if we have to get to 0, but we need to have a plan for the funds. And I think it can be a multi-year plan, but we need to spend some of it. And as I put in my executive summary, this is the big project we're looking at, but we're looking at other improvements in the other kitchens in the district as well.
And that's really the intention of those funds.
Right, exactly. And we do that every year. We've been replacing equipment. It's not something you bring to finance to consider.
They've been small,
dishwasher or
small
something.
improvements.
Exactly,
Sure. Okay.
exactly.
So, will you be bringing forth other projects, or are they just still pretty small ones?
If it's something I feel is, I don't know if I have a dollar threshold, but if it's strictly equipment-related replacements or tables,
Yeah,
no.
those. Okay.
I
I didn't
don't
know if I didn't know if you had any other.
I don't see another
thoughts on the horizon
structural
here.
one being ready for this summer if we wanted to do so. Keep in mind with these funds, because I got this question from some staff, and it's a fair question, why aren't we using this for curriculum-related expenses or other endeavors? These funds are tied to the lunch program. That's why the scope of work itself won't include adding square footage to the building. You have to stay within the confines of your existing building. Now, you can knock out a wall into a closet and make it part of the kitchen, those types of things. So there are some restrictions tied to this. But I don't see another big project. At this point, we wouldn't be ready to have it done this summer if it's anywhere near this scope.
Okay.
Mr. Rounchek.
Thank you. So you did ask DPI if we could extend that wall out and edit, that is a no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, adding square footage is a no. We are planning for it, in terms of, I asked them, design this so if we ever wanted to add on, that it makes sense. Whether we ever make that decision, because you go out to a parking lot which isn't heavily used at South, from what I hear, they have plenty of parking there from what I've seen. So we are thinking of it, it's just not gonna be in this scope. But if we ever had that, drive or goal, we could easily do it.
Well, in terms of student use, if we look at our middle schools, the amount of, the percentage, the ratio of students that qualify for free or reduced lunch is probably highest at Central.
I wouldn't know, I'd be guessing, but
Free and reduced? Morning.
Horning maybe?
Actually, Central, or Les Paul is now probably our least diverse school. I think maybe Morning would,
I've never noticed the facilities over at Horning, but does anybody know how they compare with Central's?
nicer. Horning's is a pretty nice situation.
Space-wise,
And they
it's,
can open it up into the auditorium. It's actually pretty nice.
and Butler has a similar
Lot
layout.
of windows, very airy. Yeah, it's actually pretty nice.
Yeah, from what I could tell, I mean, I've looked over at Central's, just kind of Les Paul.
Yeah.
I call it both, it doesn't, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm not particular.
yeah.
That it seemed like there could be a kind of return off of upgrading at least the facilities relative to breakfast. You know, because there certainly is a space within the serving area to create a different breakfast environment and try and encourage kids to come in and get breakfasts. So one of the things in terms of improving the quality of the food we looked at was Central's breakfast situation. Could we make that better based on what we have available at Central?
Yeah, on that note, I have, on my tentative agenda for next month, I have Aramark coming in to give you an update on how the transition went and just kind of a general report on how they're doing. And maybe I'll ask them to maybe come up with some ideas for Central or what their thoughts are on Central.
Seemed like kids could do breakfast burritos or something like that, that gives them a little bit more options in terms of how they eat breakfast and stuff. Mr. Ronachek?
Thank you. Did STEM Saratoga approach you to have more space for cafeteria or no?
I've not gotten that request, no.
When you brought up Horning, I think of that huge space, and I think STEM there, I mean, I know that they can use that for learning space as well, but there's
Which
really
one?
not much room. STEM Saratoga?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've not gotten that request.
Any other questions? Okay, well, I guess that takes care of our meeting tonight. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We are adjourned.